Notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in the Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to the same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Houck. Here. Councilman Pucciarelli.
Here.
Councilman Ritchie.
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh.
Here.
And Mayor Aronson is not yet here.
Mayor is on his way and should be here within about 15 minutes. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask that we observe a moment of silence for men and women serving in the armed forces. Thank you. At this time, I invite comments from the public. Seeing none, we'll proceed to the agenda, and we're going to take somewhat out of order the second item on the agenda, the budget for the municipal court, first, and then we'll return to the capital budgets that are listed on the agenda. So if I may, Maria, over to you.
Just briefly, I don't really have a lot. It's kind of small numbers compared to what you've been looking at. But nonetheless, what I've prepared for you just initially to start off to just kind of see where our money goes, what we collect, what the other agencies that we send some of our funds to, what portion of our workload is traffic, criminal, what goes to the village. So what I've done for you at the bottom is shown you what our budget request was for that particular year and what our actual expenditure was. So the reason why I thought that this was helpful to show you that we don't spend it if we don't need it. Every year, the municipal court has returned money back to the village. We've not used all of our budget, and actually the budget that I submit to you for 2014 is $200 higher than the budget I submitted in 2010. So really have managed to keep things under wraps. If you go to the back of that first page, that'll show you the revenue that went to the village for the 2 years, the 2010 through 2013, and the amount of cases that were filed. So you'll notice the amount of cases that have been filed have decreased. The revenue has decreased, but by a different percentage. So if you compare 2012 to 2013, there was a 12.26 drop in cases, but only a 2.3% drop in revenue. And then, of course, on the next page, you have actually what Steve has prepared, how it's allocated. Anybody have any questions?
Well, let me start with what is probably a naive question, but it appears, though, that last year your revenues in were $407,000, rounding up, and your total budget on the expense side was, where's that summary, $220,000, is that right?
On
for 2013, the total appropriations were $209,000.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
220,000.
Yeah, if you at the bottom is yes.
The total budget was 220. 209 is just through the salaries and wages line.
That's right.
And then 221,000 takes us through the balance of the expenses.
Yes.
But revenue in was $406,000.
Right. Now, we do have the benefit, we have a couple of things that can offset our budget, and you'll notice there's a column on that first page, almost all the way to the right, called POAA. That's Parking Offense Adjudication Act. That's an act that was established in 1985, which gave towns who have a very large parking volume, which of course Ridgewood does, to be able to allocate a certain amount of those funds to offset some of our expenses. And what we've managed to do over the course of the last 3 years is we've received approval from the Bergen County assignment judge to use $10,000 of that money to go towards the salary of one of my employees. So that they look at it as a way to offset some of the expenses we may incur for processing parking summonses. And we did just get the approval to use it for 2014, a $10,000 credit.
And the increase from year to year is looks like it's about $3,000, $3,800, something like that, and that is attributable to modest salary increases.
Yes.
Right. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I have maybe a question or a comment. I guess on the other expenses, I think what we're trying to do, and we've had a couple of reviews outside of these reviews with the individual department heads, but we're really trying to look at 2013 actual and see how that compares with 2014 budget requests. So I would just note that in a couple of areas we're really up, and we're actually up from $216,000 to $224,000 if you compare actual to 2014 budget. And it looks like we have a large increase in interpreter, so I'd be interested to hear what that is.
Sure. We, about two or 3 years ago, we started utilizing Language Line, which is a telephone interpreting service. So we cut our interpreting budget dramatically. However, we always have to budget for the unknown. So in other words, if I need to get a sign language interpreter, I'm looking at $500 a case or thereabouts. And that has to do with a large portion of the amount of money that we do return back to the village. It's for those years that we haven't used the funds in the interpreting line.
Yeah. So I think, we keep on going back after these reviews and looking at this stuff, but if you could just look again at your actual, outside of this room, versus your budget request, and let's see if we can, the goal here is to come in as close to zero, if not at zero, as possible, right? And so we really need folks kind of taking a view, and a couple of other reviews that we had, we've kind of heard similar things, like we're not sure where it's going to come in, so we've gone and been like very, very conservative in the estimates. So I would just ask, maybe you and I can meet later on this week and take another look at these numbers a little bit.
So that increase is due to salary and wages. That's what the increase is. There's no increase to my O&A.
Yeah, you're going from 260.
I have a $200 increase between 13 and 14 in the O&A.
No, I think it looks like you're going from 8,700 to 11,800. Isn't that true, Steve?
I'm looking at the appropriations.
Yeah, we're looking at actual.
Okay.
Again, I go back to the comment, we're looking at actual for 2013 versus what you're looking for in 2014.
And a lot of that would be contributed to what's needed in the account for the unknown interpreting expenses.
Right.
So the actual will appear to be lower because we did return that money back to the village that we didn't use for interpreters.
So, we can take another look during the week, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Any questions from members of the council? Steve, any question for you? No? Heather? Okay. All right, Maria, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie.
Well, with the permission of my fellow council members, I'd again adjust the agenda. The mayor asked that we hold off on the capital budget until he's here. The public defender budget, is that a separate budget? Okay.
Basically, the public defender budget is... Basically, the municipal public defender budget is based on court cases that have arisen during the year. Historically, the budget's been about $2,500 annually. Last year extended was $3,000, and the difference was covered by budget transfers during the end of the year. And again, that was attributable to the extra court cases that arose during the year.
So this year, the requested budget line for the public defender is how much?
$2,500.
$2,500. And that's the same as last year?
It's for the last few years, yes.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Steve. We'll move on to emergency services. Please come forward and identify yourselves for the record.
Good evening, Brian Pullman, Director of Emergency Services. The budget for emergency services for this year, if you look at it compared to the actual for 2013, you'll see there is an increase of approximately $4,000. One of the contributing factors there was in 2013 in the ambulance drivers and attendant insurance. I hadn't budgeted the full amount. There was an additional $6,000 for the medical director's insurance. I'm not sure why. In years past, it had been budgeted. Last year, I believe, and Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they were going to try to take that from an insurance trust fund. And that didn't happen, so it's back in our budget for this year.
Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. 1 year was, part of the premium was charged to the insurance trust, and then it was moved to operating budget, and it has increased the premium. There's an additional premium based on the facility where the doctor is stationed. I think the hospital no longer provides insurance, and he also needs insurance when he's with the ambulance. I believe that's what the increase is for.
Okay. And that was just one thing that hadn't been included in the appropriation from last year, so it made a significant difference in the total budget. A few other areas where it looks in 2013 where we hadn't spent our full allotted amount was in training and uniforms. And part of that is the more people that we have come in with new training, obviously our training budget goes up, and as well as our uniform budget for getting new uniforms and turnout gear for them as well. So far this year has been a very good year for us for recruiting volunteers. We currently have 5 volunteers in the EMT school right now. So we're anticipating that when they come out, hopefully all 5 successfully complete the class. We will in fact need to move forward with the uniforms and turnout gear for them as well.
So based on last year's revenue, which is all we can budget for purposes of revenues, you have to look at the actual revenues that were received the year before. It appears that your net will be $59,000 to positive. Can you explain to us how the schedule of revenue generation works and how the charges for the ambulance services work? That question came up in emails from 2 different citizens, at least that I'm aware of.
Of course.
Note for the record that Mayor Aronson has arrived.
Okay, thank you. The billing for the ambulance service, we bill for every call that the ambulance goes on, whether a transport occurs or not. We bill at a set rate. The rate was set actually back in 2008 and has stayed consistent since then and hasn't raised. It's based essentially off the Medicare rate, and our rate is set so we can get the maximum benefit through Medicare. So for any ambulance call that we go on, we send out a bill, we collect the insurance information, and then we have a billing company that takes care of all the billing and the coding, and then all of the revenue that's generated is sent back and deposited into a village account. There's some cases, and I believe the one you're familiar with, where there are calls where we provide our basic life support care, and the hospital comes and they provide advanced life support care. In that case, a patient's going to see a bill from the hospital that lists the advanced life support. It's going to list the basic life support, although they don't get a separate bill from us. In that case, we actually bill the hospital. We have a contract with the hospital, and they pay us, so that the patient only sees one bill. On that bill, it'll list additional charges, but they don't get a separate bill from us if the hospital sent them a bill.
Okay, thank you. The question was exactly to that point, whether or not this is just simply a market rate, but you're tying it to a Medicare schedule of rates.
And we do look at that every year as per the ordinance. We do have to look at it every year. And unfortunately, Medicare rates haven't increased. As a matter of fact, they decreased last year as part of the sequester. So we actually saw a slight decrease in revenue because of that.
Thank you. Questions?
Comment? Thank you very much for everything you do. I think Ridgewood really benefits from your department. How you amplify and you augment all the other public safety departments at very little cost to the village. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Roberta?
I'm okay.
No? Heather? And Steve? Okay, seeing...
question.
Yeah, please.
Let me just ask you, actually. Okay. Hey, Brian, thanks a lot. Okay. Thanks so much. Just a couple of questions, and I assume you didn't go over these. Just looking at the revenues dropped $23,000 from 12 to 13, and then you can't anticipate anything more than that. But why was there a drop from 12 to 13?
Part of that is because the drop in the Medicare reimbursement because of the sequester, and part of that is we did have a decrease in billable calls.
Okay.
And that will vary every year, and it could vary by 25 to 50 calls, which could be at $560 a call at the billable amount that could quickly affect it.
And just in terms of, thank you for that, in terms of the additional expenses, I see, I guess it's gone up $8,000 or thereabouts.
Oh, on the total budget?
Yeah.
A large part of that, as we discussed, was from increase in the insurance.
Okay.
There's approximately $6,000 increase there.
Got it. Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're up to
Thank you very much.
emergency management. How are you? Thank you. I was going to ask that you do the library.
Mr. Kleiman, emergency management.
No, we're going to put that after library. His is just the capital budget? Then in that case, Mayor,
I'm sorry, Chris? Okay,
when we go to
Chris, all right. Welcome, Chris.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Do you want me to identify myself? Yes. Chris Ripteshauser, Village Engineer.
Oh, there it is.
So we're looking, what are we looking at, the capital budget?
So we're looking at the capital budget? Mm-hmm. All right, Chris, so what should we be looking
It's
for?
page 3. It's page 3, right, Chris?
Yep.
Engineer.
Page 3 in the middle
engineering.
under Public Works -1, Engineering, is where we can start off if you choose.
All right, can you walk us through these?
Yes, before you have our capital budget requests. The requests were not all granted, naturally, and you have the amounts that were negotiated and approved under the second column under requested 2014. For road resurfacing, we have $1.3 million. Miscellaneous drainage improvements, that got zeroed for this year. We have GIS software for $15,000. We have, number 4, we even erased the name on that one. We have the Chestnut Street lot fence. This is a fence around the trash and dumpster enclosure in the Chestnut Street lot. That was approved for $10,000. We had requested funding for the salt shed concrete wall reconstruction up at the streets facility. That was zeroed out for this year. We put in an additional amount to a previously funded amount for a vehicle replacement. It's for, I believe, a 1998 Neon. This would bring it up to a vehicle that we could purchase, because $13,000 doesn't buy much. We have the Kingsbridge bridge replacement. This is a bridge over the Saddle River from East Saddle River Road to Kingsbridge. We had a prior year funding of $59,000. We requested money for this year, but it was zeroed out for 2014. We have the Lakeview compliance. That is $50,000. That's to make our compost facility compliant with the new permit we got. The village got an upgraded permit. We went from a Class C recycling facility to a Class BC facility. This will better enable us to handle our leaf compost. And part of what we have to do is we want to build a berm, do some landscaping to help mitigate some of the issues from the facility that we've gotten complaints from residents. Some of those residents take their complaints to the Bergen County Department of Health. Bergen County Department of Health then comes and visits us.
Great.
And that's in engineering.
Sure. Just street resurfacing, the $1.3 million, how does it compare to last year's? What was the number?
I think it's actually maybe a little bit more. Steve would have a better handle on the numbers. We usually get between 1.1 and 1.3.
And in terms of the list, when will that come out? When will that be made public? What roads we're going to be resurfacing?
We're going to work off, right now, what we're working off is the list we prepared for the 2 contracts we awarded late last year. We want those 2 contractors to start working. As soon as we see how much they get done with the amounts of their bids, we'll have a better understanding of which streets we will have to bid out in the capital appropriation for this year. It's difficult to say. We have an idea. We also have to reassess all our streets because we had a very harsh winter.
Right. If possible, sometime soon, I think we talked about this, making the list available, maybe putting it up on the website.
Yeah, Chris and I have spoken about that as well, so that is the goal.
That's what we start getting the most emails about and phone calls about.
And we're still waiting for the North Van Deen grant.
Yes.
And that's kind of holding us up a little bit, too. So once we hear about that, that'll be, I guess, $150,000 about, maybe?
We hope so. Roberta's correct. We did apply for a DOT paving grant to resurface North Van Deen, the portion of the North Van Deen from East Ridgewood Avenue up to Glen that was not covered by the grant from the southern portion that the contractor should be starting work shortly on. We hope to get the grant because that'll offset capital funding, and then that capital, the value of that capital can be used elsewhere.
Great.
So I would say the other thing that Chris and I talked about prior to this meeting is we're probably going to pull out, at least for now, that line 7, which is the vehicle replacement line, right? Because we think, based on some technology that we might be considering, that perhaps we will free up some vehicles, and we don't have to purchase this vehicle. So, okay.
Yeah, we're going to investigate some technology, as Roberta said, that may make that purchase request superfluous.
And if that was the case, what would happen to that $13,000 from prior year?
Well, the $13,000 is in the sinking fund, right, Steve?
Yes. The old sinking fund. Okay.
It's that old sinking fund. So it's not real money. It's just that we wouldn't appropriate it, right?
It felt real to us, though. It felt real to us for a short time.
Okay.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, can we anticipate that this $1.3 million is now going to be part of an ongoing program to resurface streets every year, or is this just a one-off? We want to spend $1.3 million to do the 10 worst streets, and then we'll wait another 5 years. How is this?
We usually ask for our budget request, usually is in the $4 to $5 million a year range. We go in with that number into our capital budget hearings. But in our capital budget hearings, all the requests from all the departments are put together. We come up with a very large number that's quite unpalatable to you folks on the council. The directors are then told, sharpen your pencils and reduce it. What it usually comes reduced to is about 1.1 to 1.3 for capital paving every capital budget year. It's been inconsistent the last few years because, I think last year's capital was done late in the fall. Usually it's been done at this time of year in the past. It'd be great if we maintained or went back to that level of consistency. I understand that the FAC has recommended that capital and operating expense budgets be done simultaneously before the council. That may be a very good direction to go with this.
See, I would also add that Chris and I had a conversation today, and I asked him, will our customers be delighted when he's done this year? Delight would be nice, right? And the way Chris explained it to me was, in fact, asphalt lasts for about 15 years, and what we're doing now is we're replacing that asphalt or relaying it after 20 years. So we might have some happy customers, but if we might want to accelerate this at some point, given the low interest rate environment, but that's another decision. Yeah.
And that's a good point, because this is one of those issues also that's both a quality of life issue and a public safety
Absolutely.
issue.
That's right.
And it's definitely something we should think about going forward.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, because a lot's been said about the condition of our streets, and if our customers know that we have $1 to $1.5 million anticipated every year for the next few years, we could also anticipate which streets we will be doing. So your street may not be done in 2014, maybe it will be done in 2016, but it's on the list. And then if there's an urgency to it to spend more, then I guess we would have to look at the possibility of borrowing.
And then I guess we have the issue of county roads versus local roads, and we had that gentleman kind of complain last week at the council session. He's on East Glen, and although that's been paved, it's been done by the county, they haven't handled really the curbs. And so as a result, water is
jumping his curb.
Jumping.
That's, I believe, Mr. Wardley, if I recall his name correctly. He's got now a very reduced reveal curb. It's maybe 2 inches high instead of the standard 6. So the curb's ability to channel the runoff down the street is going to reduce. When there's a heavier runoff, the water has a tendency to jump the curb and erode behind it. He's seeking the village to raise the curb, rip out the old, reconstruct it with a higher curb to better control the runoff.
So Heather and I were at a meeting last week with Northwest Bergen County, and they were talking about some new programs that they have, and I'm just wondering if it's time to go back to them and say, will you consider doing the curbs as well on your county roads? And Chris and I might just go down to Hackensack, and it's worth a try, right? Don't you think, Chris? He's a
Yes,
little
but
skeptical, but
I'm sorry, but maybe we'll have better success. In years past, when we've approached the county about curbs on their streets, they've basically said they're our problem, the municipality's problem.
yeah. So
Maybe there'll be a change of heart and a change of mind or thought in the administration at the county. That would be wonderful for us.
And it seems that way in general. I mean, even the meeting that we had last week, they were very positive about. I mean, they kept on saying, "We want to help." So
Bernie just committed to helping us
Right,
also.
I just got
Did
that
you?
promise.
Tom?
Hey, Chris, the Kingsbridge Lane project, is that going to get done this year because it's been fully funded?
No, that's only a partial funding. We had asked,
That's not what it says.
we had 50,000 prior year, and we got nothing for this year.
No, 59 prior year, 59 total estimate.
yeah, that would indicate it's fully.
It's, all right, I know that's not going to be sufficient amount to rebuild that pedestrian bridge.
Okay, so then the total estimated cost is incorrect?
I think the total estimated cost is going to be higher. We'd have to get a new estimate. We've had a number of estimates several years ago, because this has been a frequent item in the budget over the years.
So it's not fully funded at this point?
I don't believe it's fully funded at 59,000.
Okay. But Steve, you show it fully funded, right, obviously, because that's what...
There's two other appropriations for the Kings Line Bridge. I can look those up, sorry. There is one other bond ordinance that was done several years ago for Kingsbridge Lane, so I just have to look that up. But I have the numbers for the street resurfacing program. In 2012, $1,300,000 was appropriated.
I'm sorry, how much?
$1,300,000.
$1,300,000, and last year was $1 million even for the 2013 program.
Anything else, Tom? Any questions, comments? All right.
Traffic and signal.
That's at the top of the next page. We're requesting funding to replace get a spare traffic controller. These are the units that control the signals as they operate. We've noticed that they are getting damaged more frequently in accidents. We only have one spare. We need a second one, because if we have an accident, we have to put a controller in. We have no spare until we get one from a manufacturer, and the lead time on that has gotten quite extensive. When an accident does take out a signal, we take every effort to get the responsible party to pay for the repairs. We usually get that information courtesy of the police department, because they take the motorist's insurance information and we send them bills. Sometimes we have to go through our JIF representative, and at the worst case, it gets turned over to the village attorney for collections. We're also
I
looking...
have a question on that, if I could.
Sure.
Why don't we put bollards up around the traffic signal boxes?
We do have them around some of them, not all of them.
Not the last one that got hit, we didn't.
Last one I got hit was at the Orchard in Lincoln.
I thought it was Glen and Monroe.
That was before that.
Okay. So
Like I said, we're wearing them out.
should we be putting them in every time that we have a...
We can. We'd have to have funding for the cost to put those in.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that, because I remember last time we had to go out on an emergency basis to get that last signal box.
Yes, we had to write an extraordinary unspecified services resolution for the council to approve.
So it would be good to have a spare in stock, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we ought to consider putting bollards up around it. I mean, that might minimize the damage, if at all, you know.
The bollards would help. We may get some kickback from residents who might find them unsightly.
Okay.
I know, okay. We can do that, but the next time we'll also have to see that we have the funding to do that.
Okay. I mean, I would think it wouldn't add substantial dollars to, you know, I would think less than $1,000 per side.
I think we could do it for under 1,000.
You do a footing and
A footing in a steel tube and silver concrete.
silver concrete, yeah. Great, thanks.
Okay.
And on the other two items?
Let me just make a note. The other items are replacement vehicles. We have vehicle 248, which, if I recall correctly, is a mason dump that's also used in our snow plowing fleet. So whenever it's not used by signal in the winter, it is mounted with a plow, plows our streets. And the other one is the service van. don't recall the age of that. It's something like in the mid-'90s, and it's at the end of its useful lifespan. We have the maintenance record if anyone would desire them.
So on the first truck, 248, you're looking to fully fund it this year?
I'd like to fully fund it this year. We had the $10,000 in prior year's funding.
I assume it's needed this year, is that?
It's deteriorating. This winter, it got used a lot. We had a lot of snow.
Right. Okay. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I asked the manager, I know you thought, at least had the impression that you thought the police department program for leasing vehicles looked pretty promising, and just I wonder whether we can lease an $80,000 truck rather than buy it, particularly since we wear them out so, we use them so heavily.
Yeah, I think the other issue also is we've been brainstorming with a couple of folks on the vehicles in general, and the whole issue of whether or not we should be turning over these vehicles every 2 to 3 years and buying them at a deep discount from the state, and then 2 years later selling it back and probably making our money back. It'll take an awful lot of use out of the garage facility. Mm-hmm. So I kind of look at that in that context and look at these in that context, that if we start a program where we're turning these vehicles over every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, in essence, it's almost like leasing it. If you turn it over in 3 years and you can get $40,000, maybe that's, I don't know if that's realistic for an $80,000 vehicle.
We heard about a town down in southern New Jersey that was buying it at a deep discount and selling it the next year at a profit. And they did this for a while. It's kind of clever. I'm not sure that it's not really ethical, I don't think, but we would keep it 2 to 3 years, I think. So we have to work on that. We have to work on what the numbers look like.
And look at leasing.
So we need some time to do that analysis.
Leasing maintenance included may also help, because as you observed when you were on the Financial Advisory Committee, so much of our vehicle repair is caused by the age of the vehicle. So there's no free lunch. We keep them long, and then we end up spending a lot to maintain them.
Which puts a very different twist on what we want to do with the repair facility, right? Because if we start really decreasing the repairs, the need for that repair facility really starts plummeting, right? Which a couple of municipalities do. So, again, we need a little more time.
More of a facility that's doing ongoing maintenance, more routine maintenance, rather than rewelding chassis.
And then Paul and I were meeting with Kathy Donovan and her administrator, I think I mentioned it earlier, and apparently they're opening, they said to us, they might be opening a vehicle repair facility, within which case we need to talk with them and speak with them about that. So,
let me ask you, just in terms of the repair facility, I know we've been talking about doing an analysis of what our needs are. Would we throw this issue into that same sort of mix?
I think it's part of it. I do. Okay. That's not to say we don't need to buy a new Mason dump truck, but we would buy it with, under this new kind of scenario.
Right. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Right. Anything else for Chris?
Yes, we have a couple property maintenance items. The traffic and signal building, the brick facade is delaminating from the building. We had known about it, but unfortunately last fall when we had a OSHA inspection of the facility, it got written up on us. So we had to put out caution tape to make a fall protection zone around the building where no one is supposed to go into because they might be hit by something coming off the building. So we're seeking funding to reclad the building, probably into siding, either a vinyl or siding or something like that. We're also looking for funding for the Village Hall roof repairs. This is kind of important to the person to my left. We have a leak over Heather's office. She's been polite about it, but as soon as the rains start, the calls from her will just increase.
Could we just buy a pail or something we could put in there?
I think it's more than one pail. And
Umbrella.
that doesn't do good for the papers in there.
Is that as a result of the solar panels that were installed on the roof?
I'm not quite sure, because we'd have to take a real look. The roof was up in its years when we put the solar panels on. And so far, we only have this one isolated area over Heather's office. We also, I think, we have a couple of the spots on the roof over the police department that have been problematic in the last few years. We'd like to continue to address those. And then,
We have one more, I think, right?
oh,
Parking.
yeah, we got to go over my favorite
My
department.
favorite one, the parking utility.
No, water pollution.
Oh, you want to do, oh, yes, that's right, sorry. I was jumping ahead.
Oh, I can understand the eagerness. In water pollution, we're looking for funding to replace the digester covers. These are floating covers on top of our anaerobic digesters. We had a problem back in January. We had an upset digester. The best analogy is like if you had an upset tummy and you felt very gassy. That's exactly what happened to our digester. It felt very foamy and gassy. Got that, Darius? So much so that one of them burped and belched extensively. I can't make this up, Mayor. If you want to see it sometime or the picture, I'd be happy to show it to you.
So funny.
So we have to address that. That's right now. Hopefully we can keep at that. And the other one is a pump station refurbishing. The village has 3 minor and 3 major pump stations. They run constantly. We need some funding to replace pumps as they wear out and fail. With this capital, we will use the capital on an as-needed basis. As a pump fails, we purchase a new one. We're not going to go in and just replace pumps that are still running. We only want to replace pumps as they fail, and we need to replace them.
Do you anticipate one failing this year, or you just...
I fully anticipate one or several fail. A lot of them are up in the 20-year plus range. We rebuild them if we can. When we no longer can rebuild them, we have to replace them. And we're looking for basically a line of funding that we can do that with.
Any questions, comments?
And now off to Roberta's favorite department, parking utility.
Just where is it, Chris?
It's the last page, bottom.
Last item, last page.
Last item, last page.
Thank you.
In discussion at the capital hearings, we got approved for $15,000 of funding for our continual program to replace the individual meter mechanisms and meter housings as we need them. We also got approved for some multi-space meters, parking meter units, and in particular, looking at replacing the Chestnut Street multi-space meter unit. In discussion with Roberta, we would like to present a more unified, comprehensive proposals for the integration of multi-space meters in the village in light of the recent difficulties we've had with the parking utility. Big advantage of multi-space meters is they'll take bills, and if the village chooses, we would have them take credit cards. That's still something the village has to decide on because we don't accept credit cards in much of the business the village conducts. If we take them with the credit cards, people can pay for their parking tariffs with a credit card, and all those funds are electronic. And, we feel that there would be a much better tracking of that money to avoid the unfortunate incident that happened.
Right.
So this would address Route 17, the park and ride. We would
Yes, park and
make that-
ride.
Right, okay.
Hey, and we've discussed, and I think we've discussed, in addition to multi-space meters, I'd like us to look at, there are individual meters that take credit cards, that use apps on cell phones. Right. So, because the multi-space meters can be good, but they also can be a challenge for people who have mobility challenges, people who are late. So if we can maybe look at, among the things we look at, the options, are those meters that actually take everything from coins to credit cards to cell phones.
We're going to start with a proposal to you about Route 17 and Chestnut Street, using Route 17 as a pilot program. So we need to work that through, probably by May, early May.
It would be an integrated approach.
Yeah,
We're looking at, I think we're going to be able to address the concerns you raised because we fully understand that we just can't put a multi-space meter in by itself and say, have a nice day. There will be patrons of ours that may not have a credit card. We need to provide alternative means for them to pay, whether it's they have a smartphone or we use a QC scan vendor, as I've discussed with the council, or another component is the UP3. That's been successful in the village. Maybe a greater emphasis on that for certain areas, such as the park and ride.
Questions, comments?
I just have a quick question. So, but the $15,000 a year, every year for parking meter maintenance, and you call it replace parking meter mechanisms.
Yep.
Makes me nauseous every time I have to. It does, because I envision new parking meters in the near future. And so last year when I saw this, I said, hopefully next year, and the next year, and the next year. And this is a pilot program, hopefully, so maybe next year.
No, we would take this out. Based on the recommendations that we're going to make next month, that $15,000 comes out.
Oh, yeah.
Because we would use the
good.
insides of the meters potentially at Route 17 and use those as backups, so we would not have to do this. So you're not going to see it again if you guys agree with the recommendation we make in May.
If our recommendation is satisfaction to council for the locations we wish to implement the multi-space, we would harvest any available single meter mechanisms or duplex meter mechanisms and reuse them elsewhere in the village.
Oh, thanks.
Just repurposing them.
Yeah.
Right.
And that would benefit us from not having to purchase replacement. So that over time, if we go in that direction, we may be able to get away from that archaic coin-operated single meter mechanism,
Thank you so much. Great.
if we're successful.
Yeah, I think we should be.
Exciting, good stuff.
It is good stuff.
That's it.
Yep, thank you. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
We just need to bring Brian back for his capital while he's still here.
Sorry, John. All right, welcome back.
Thank you. I apologize for not going over this the first time I was up here. Emergency Services has several capital requests for this coming year. Item number 1 is under Building Safety and Security. The request there is for $20,000. That's going to fund a door access system to replace our current one. Our current system kind of being held together almost with Band-Aids at this point. It's a individual per door system. We're looking to go to a centralized system that we based off the network that we can control all the doors with. The second part of that is for security cameras for the outside of the building, something that we've been looking at for a couple of years. We're trying to get the funding for it this year. Part of this project is also in conjunction, I believe, with the security project that Dylan has for the fleet services. I think he was intending to put cameras there, and we would be housing the server in our server closet at Douglas. So this is our portion of that.
Yeah, I asked Dylan also, the issue came up about grade and pool the other night, and do we have cameras, and we don't. So I asked the direct reports to come back, and on our staff meeting this week, we'll be discussing, in an ideal world, where would we put cameras. So there's a list of places that have come together through Brian, through Dylan, through John Ward, including the grade and pool. So we would put an integrated proposal together on the cameras and see what you think about it. So this would be part of that integrated proposal on cameras. That's what you're referring to, I think.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Great. Any questions, comments? Good.
There's the next one that I think is listed, it might just be listed by title, but the amount is not there. It's actually number 2, All-Terrain Rescue Vehicle 83. When I left the last capital meeting, I believe it was still in there, and I spoke to Steve about it. I didn't realize until just the other day that it was out, and I don't know if that was, if that meant to be. There was a copy that I got in the meantime that actually had that number listed with the number above. So I would like to just speak about it and just tell you what that vehicle is for your consideration. Our vehicle 183 is a 2000 John Deere Gator. It's a all-terrain vehicle. You've probably seen it at the football games, the street fairs. Has a capability of having a patient lay down on the back on a longboard. We can transport them through crowds, over grass. July 4th, you see it out on the field taking patients off. The current one is, again, 14 years old. We're looking to replace it with a newer unit. The newer unit has much enhanced safety, including seat belts for the operator, roll cage. Actually, the newer vehicles have enclosures both for the driver and for the patient in back, so there is a increased safety as well as increased privacy. The cost of that is $65,000. With that comes new trailer to house it, which would then allow us to roll down one of our current trailers. The suggestion was rolling it down to OEM for some of the capital requests which they have to house that for future deployments. The last request that I think you see on there with funding is the replacement of ambulance stretchers for $45,000. We're looking to replace our ambulance stretchers with a newer version that has a power lifting device with it. It's a power assist lifting device. One of the things that we're always doing is looking at any injuries that we sustain to any of our personnel, and most frequently on the EMS side, it's from lifting the stretcher, lifting and moving with the stretcher. So we've changed our policies to limit that. One of the things that we have to look at, though, is there technology out there to make this safer? And there is. It is expensive, but these devices do last a long time. Currently, our youngest stretcher is 10 years old. So, and the technology and the current stretchers have been there the entire 20 years I've been there. So it's time now to look at it and say, okay, we can protect our EMTs, our volunteers with this, and I think now is the right time to move that. We also may be able to get some trade-in value on our current stretchers, but we won't really know that until we get them evaluated.
Sure, just a question.
A question for a manager. Assume we bought the vehicle and the stretchers, that would be $110,000. And when we looked at the operating budget, we showed a net revenue to the village of about $59,000. Will we be reflecting now going forward the depreciation of those items so that if it's a vehicle that will depreciate over 5 years, the realistic cost, we're going to have a $13,000 a year depreciation item that will show that 58 is down to 45, something like that. So that we have a realistic assessment, because when we saw the operating budget, we said, oh, look, $59,000 profit center. But now if you factor in these capital expenditures and you depreciate them over some reasonable, useful life, it's not quite $59,000.
So on the new FAC sheets, we do show that, right?
Yes. On the first sheet for emergency services in all the departments, there is a fleet vehicle cost, which I abstracted from the fixed asset inventory sheet, and then there's also a depreciation cost for the facility on Douglas Place. That's where the EMS facility is. That's $25,267, and the vehicle fleet cost would be $85,500.
Okay. Now I don't know if you factored in when you had vehicle fleet costs. Whether you factored in the new $65,000 vehicle or not, presumably not.
It's not even in the capital budget right now.
That was my question. Where is it? I mean, he was...
Yeah.
He apparently had it originally in his numbers and it was taken out. I didn't take it out. This is prior. He's talking about that new vehicle that used to be in...
The all-terrain,
right.
Yes. The capital budget request tonight, there's nothing purchased. There's nothing new. The vehicle fleet costs that I have on the first sheet are all current vehicles that are in the fleet right now that are active. That's ambulances, support vehicles, there's pickup trucks, trailers.
So that does not include the all-terrain that Brian was just talking about. And the question is...
It's not even in the capital request right now.
You wanted it in. It was taken out, I guess. I'm just
it was taken out after the last meeting that I had, so I just didn't know if it was intentionally or if it was, a typo somewhere. There was another typo in a sheet that I had gotten that actually included the amount above it at $120,000. So I didn't know if there was, something that got changed in the spreadsheet. So I'd asked Steve if there was anything for that.
That was a question, and Steve, the
I'll
answer
have
is...
to go back and check my sheets for that, because this budget request is close to the $2.8 million limit for
Currently.
That's correct.
But it is important to note that if that vehicle is approved, it's going to depreciate at something like $12,000 a year, which will bring, with maybe $15,000 a year, which will bring the vehicle costs from $85,000 in the operating budget to $100,000.
97.
Which is good, because that reflects the real cost of our emergency services, factoring in the depreciation. So that will be a plus, of course, if we decide to go ahead and buy that vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as an overall point, we're doing these capital reviews kind of in isolation of one another, and it's good to do it as part of an integrated whole with the department, which we had recommended, which the FAC had recommended. But I think when push comes to shove, we have to decide as a team how much we're spending on total capital, and then we're going to have to go back and prioritize one against the other. So, right, I mean, I guess that's how I guess Chris, who's not here, explained it to me that at the end of all this, people sit in a room and kind of hash it out.
That's how they
Yeah, we actually did that. We actually went through it with the department heads. We did that in early January, I think. And so this is the reduced request. They came in with probably the total was, probably close to $6 million?
$6 million, I thought.
Yeah, so we have done that. I mean, not that we can't do it again, but it has been done.
Right.
Great. Any other questions, comments for Brian? All right, thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
Are we ready for Jeremy now?
Use this.
Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. OEM has no revenue.
Why is that?
I'm done. Why is that? Why is that? I suppose we can get into the business of...
No, don't even go.
Okay, we're going to do operating, right?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So if you look at last year's versus actual, there's really one item that wasn't, which line item is it? Contractual services. There's a differential there of several $1,000s. I just want to explain that. This was for, or is for, the subscription for the lightning detection system. And you may recall several years ago when we first installed that system, we did it. It was a joint project with the Board of Ed. They actually bid out the installation and hardware, and the monthly service fee for the subscription was billed to the Board of Ed. They're supposed to bill it back to us. That was the arrangement, that the village would pay for the monthly service if they paid for the capital cost of the equipment. For some reason, it never got billed to us. Steve's working with the Board of Ed now to kind of, I think, bring that current. So that's money that's owed to the Board of Ed. It's not that it was otherwise not spent. Okay. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. So most of the line items for this year are relatively the same as last year. There are a couple that have jumped. I should explain. The contractual services, above and beyond the contract for the subscription for the lightning detection, we budgeted this year, I think $1,700 for Swift Reach for reverse 911 calls. You may recall that during Hurricane Sandy, I believe, we had an outsized cost for doing reverse 911 calls that were done through the water department's contract, as opposed to the county system, which is no cost to us. And the reason for that is we often put out reverse 911 calls that don't meet the standards for the county's contract. In other words, they're not, a life-threatening emergency, but it may be something that we want to advise residents that there's a major storm coming, or we don't want you to park on the street so the snowplows can get through. Those kinds of things, we put those calls through on water's contract, and the ones that are directed by OEM to be put out, they rightfully should be billed back to the village and not to water. So that's why we built that in this year. The other new item is the lease of a vehicle, and we can either talk about that now, or there's also a capital item for that. Maybe that's a larger conversation. We can talk about that in a few minutes. But however you want to handle.
Lease of a vehicle, where is that? I'm sorry.
It's
line item 051.
051.
Purchase of vehicles.
Oh, I see. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
So
let's talk about it. So this has been from my perspective an ongoing battle, and I should give a little bit of the backstory for everyone in the room. So until 2006, the emergency management coordinator had an emergency vehicle through virtue of holding one or more other positions in the village. So until that time, the OEM coordinator had a village vehicle. I was able to fulfill the response function of the office. And when the positions were separated in 2006, well, suffice to say that OEM was the one position out of the three held by the coordinator at that time that was left without a vehicle. We suffered through. Since then, it's just really not tenable. As some of the council members know, they've seen me, out there. It's not ideal. It's not safe. It's not appropriate for a public safety director who has responsibilities by statute to be out in hazardous conditions and situations responding to emergencies in a personal vehicle. We can discuss it at length. I don't want to take up a half hour, but that's the position. And every year that I've been involved with the budgeting, first when I was deputy director, now director, in the last 8 or maybe 9 years, there's been a budget request in the capital budget for a vehicle for OEM, and every year it's been taken out when the directors and the manager have huddled before we have use. This is the first year, thankfully, with the support of the other directors and the acting manager several months ago, that it remained in the budget. And so I did a little bit of I did some research and I did a survey because I wanted to do some analytics about what is standard in Bergen County for an Office of Emergency Management. So I contacted the other 69 municipalities and received responses from 53 of them, which is a pretty good sample set. It's about 77%. And what I found was, of those 53 municipalities, 43 of the 53 have a municipal vehicle that's assigned to their OEM. Of those 43, 27 are OEM coordinators who hold another position. They're either senior police officials or senior fire officials, so they have vehicles that do double duty. Of the remaining 16 municipalities, it gets kind of interesting. Of the 16 remaining municipalities that have civilian OEM directors and have vehicles assigned to them, 14 of those 16 are towns that are smaller than Ridgewood in population or land mass or both. So there are only 2 municipalities that assign vehicles to their OEM directors that are larger than Ridgewood. The more interesting numbers are the 10 municipalities out of the sample set that do not have a vehicle assigned to OEM. Of those 10, 9 are smaller than Ridgewood in either population or land mass or both. So there really is only one municipality in all of Bergen County of the 53 that I spoke to that is larger than Ridgewood that does not provide a vehicle to its emergency management director, and that's TNEC. So, and I have a spreadsheet if you're interested in the breakdown and all that. But, and I can give you story after story over the years that I've been involved that I've been. I apologize.
Uh-oh. Is it an emergency?
It's not an emergency. That I've been asked to or have been required by the office by the position to be out with police, with fire, with emergency services, both in obviously extreme weather conditions, which is what everyone thinks of when we talk about OEM, but also other types of incidences, overturned tanker trucks on Route 17. I can go on and on. And there I am in my family car. And it's just not appropriate. So,
the station wagon, you pull it.
Exactly. Not to mention all the gear in the back. There's no room for groceries and so on.
So appreciate the work you do. You and I have talked about this briefly in the past. And again, as you sort of framed it, we're talking about primarily needing it during an event of some sort. And the question is, the obvious question is, why can't we just make a vehicle designated for you for that time rather than getting a new
vehicle? Let's talk about that, Mayor. And I think there are a couple things. One is that's a philosophical discussion, and I appreciate your view, needing a vehicle in emergencies. By statute, an Office of Emergency Management in New Jersey is required to be available 24/7. That's in the statute. It's in the regulation. And so, it's just not tenable at 2 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me, if I need to respond to an incident, be it an evacuation of Valley Hospital. I mean, you know, pick an example, to have to, and we've tried this, to, you know, drive to Village Hall, find the keys to a vehicle, find where the vehicle is parked. It might not have been left where it was supposed to. It might be at the village garage being repaired, and then respond to an emergency. So that's one is, you know, where's the vehicle when I need it? Two is it needs to be appropriately equipped, right? It needs to be an emergency vehicle. We've tried this in the past, and Chris isn't here any longer. So we've done this in years past when there's been a planned event, 4th of July, for example. We've begged, borrowed, and stolen, well, not stolen, but and borrowed vehicles either from engineering or from parks. I need to, you know, the day before, take the vehicle up to emergency services and ask some of the volunteers to install temporary radios and lights in that vehicle. Then, you know, have it stripped the day after, have it returned, and so forth. So it just doesn't make any sense. And moreover, there was a period of time where engineering actually gave me a key to one of their Durangos. Not a safe vehicle. And the last time I asked Chris to use it, he said, I am not, quote, I am not comfortable having you drive that vehicle because it's no longer safe. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, that's a separate issue. But let me just ask you one other question, then I'll open it up to these folks. The 43 of the 53, do they have full-time vehicles?
Well, I think you said that 27 are shared.
27
are
shared.
27 shared.
Right, so you'll have, like, for example, a police chief or a fire inspector is also the OEM coordinator, so they have use of a vehicle.
Right. But of those that only are OEM coordinators,
yeah.
How many of them have full-time vehicles?
16.
16.
Questions? Comments?
Just some historical, because I'm obviously involved with emergency management. You know, the vehicle, the emergency management director also serves sometimes and very often at the beginning of an incident as an incident command vehicle. And in the past, I know when Bob Greenlow was here, many a day I had been with him when all of a sudden something came up and we both hopped in the vehicle together, and he was first on scene, and, you know, traffic control, lights, securing the scene, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, you know, we're talking about a $50 million budget here, and this is such an insignificant dollar amount, but it's clearly, you know, from my point of view, very, very important, especially, you know, we just seem to have more and more storms and you know, Route 17 and everything else, and again, I wouldn't feel comfortable with Jeremy, you know, responding with the family station wagon with a blue light on the roof. You know? I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, I would certainly support this.
I would kind of offer a perspective also that maybe there is a vehicle that's not being used too much in the current fleet of vehicles that we can assign to Jeremy. So I'd like to maybe take that offline and we could talk about it. My understanding are there are a couple of vehicles that, one in particular hasn't been used in the last year. I wouldn't use that one necessarily, but there could be room here where vehicles are not used that much to take that vehicle, assign it to Jeremy, and have whoever's not using it a lot share a vehicle with someone else. So I think there's a possibility is all I'm saying. So maybe we could take that offline. Because I agree with Tom. I think this is important.
I heard the argument. I'm just not a supporter of employees having village vehicles. I'm just not. I don't want them taking vehicles home, and I'm not suggesting this is true of you, but I think vehicles will be used to go to soccer games and go shopping, and we have a fleet as it is that we're maintaining. We have a huge fleet, and we have a village maintenance garage to service that fleet, and we just got through with a conversation saying we have to find an alternative. To go from that conversation to say, yeah, let's have another vehicle in the fleet, I'm not there. I don't see it.
So I didn't want to, this is kind of premature of me, and I didn't really want to talk about this, but now that you've, because the thoughts are not well formed, but as Paul knows, Paul and I had lunch with, again, the county, Kathy and her administrative guy. One way we could address that issue is talk about implementing a GPS system in Ridgewood that would track the cars, that would track cars that are idling, that would track cars that are, we would know exactly where every car is and if they were going back and forth to, I don't know, soccer games and stuff. And the county did that, and our understanding from that conversation is they managed to get rid of many, many cars. Their gas usage has dropped tremendously. It's more effective, they feel, and we need some time to look at that issue, but that would certainly address some of your concerns. And again, it's kind of a very, we just started the discussions. Dylan and I have spoken about the technology. We're going to speak to the county about what technology they're using, but we would be able actually to track every car that we have, how it's utilized or how it's not utilized, and actually maybe stop some of the, there could be incessant idling, for example. We would know, beeps would go off and say your car is idling.
See, in Jeremy's case, may be the most compelling case because he's articulated a good case for it, but I don't want to suffer death by 1,000 cuts here where, okay, we've got one more car. I know there are other employees who have cars and take them home, and I'd like to know who they are and why they need them and have a rational program before we increase the fleet by yet another vehicle.
That's why I'm suggesting that
maybe his case is a worthy one and somebody else's isn't. But please let's have a comprehensive plan for who does and does not have a car to take off campus. And, we also have the issue, as you're familiar with from the FAC, of having our police cars idling while they're minding the PSE&G work. I understand it's a slightly different issue, but those cars are running, not to mention what it does to the atmosphere, what is it doing to the vehicles as they're just idling away for hours on end, so we can get $20 an hour from PSE&G, consuming gasoline and running those engines into the ground. And we all know, how that works. So I think we need a rational program.
Right, and that GPS system
vehicles.
tells cars that are idling, and actually, what the county did is they actually wait. If a car was idling a certain amount of time, they sent the supervisor out to go check the car out, and they've really cut into their use of fuel.
Yeah, and I understand those cars are idling, the police cars are idling. The reason I heard is so that the radios can work. So you're running 6 cylinders on 96 octane or whatever it is, gasoline, so you can have a radio available. Does not 21st century technology have some other way to feed a 12-volt bus system for a radio other than running a gasoline engine? Just seems like a heck of a generator to run a radio. But anyway, it's a separate issue. But it's part and parcel of the same program that we need we have to rationalize our vehicles. Just as you don't want to maintain them with a new facility, I don't want to start saying, well, here's one more vehicle in the fleet.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Well, let's do this, as you suggest, to take that conversation offline. I mean, I think, Jeremy, you recognize the council gets what you do and how important it is. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's sometimes underappreciated until it's too late. So we recognize that you have certain needs, and again, we don't want you out there with the station wagon. So we'll figure a way forward on this, and you're in good hands over there. Okay. Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Capital?
Yeah, capital?
Capital, yeah.
Oh, that's right, capital.
Okay. And the reason that this total capital request went from 0 last year to a sizable number this year is everything was redlined last year before it even made it to the council, which is, par for the course, unfortunately, for OEM. So the first project is a vehicle. I think we just talked about that. The second, 4,900, is for furniture and some computer equipment for the Emergency Operations Center. We've talked about that in the past, and several of the members of the council have been in the room when we've been operating. It's a bit chaos. So this effectively is, partitioned desks along one wall for each of the disciplines, one for DPW, one for police, fire, and emergency services, to operate, and computers and phones and radios for them to talk to their people when we're coordinating things out of that room. So that's so it's basically the furniture and some additional laptop computers, I believe. 3 is an additional digital message sign. The council approved one for last year. We are working with a couple of vendors now and trying to spec out exactly the technology that we want. Our current plan is to have one sign at the corner of Linwood and Maple, sort of where the Graydon Park sign is now, replace that. So it should be, the one we're looking at has a 180-degree viewing angle, so you should be able to view it if it's sort of catty corner from all four parts of the intersection. The second one we're looking to put on the east side of the train trestle, facing westbound traffic. So when they're stopped at the light at Broad and Franklin, they look up now where those billboards are. That'll be a digital sign. And we have the option of also doing one on the west side of the train trestle, so you can see it when you're coming east. Brian and I talked about it. I'm not sure that that's ideal. There's no stoplight there, and you're having people looking up as they're driving. I'm not sure how safe that is, but we can. The train trestle will probably be wired, so that if we want to add a second sign on the west side, we should be able to do that. And depending on which technology we go with, the prices may come down slightly. We're still playing. It also depends on the aesthetics. Do we do a pedestal or what they call a monument frame for the sign that's out here? So, in any event, that request will get us a second sign for the train trestle and possibly a third for the other side of the train trestle. Okay. And by the way, just so you understand how that technology works, we'll be able to program those signs remotely. So if we dial into the network here in Village Hall, where the software will be housed on a desktop computer, we'll be able to reprogram those signs from anywhere.
Let me just ask you about that before you continue, because as you know, I'm a big supporter of this, and I think this would be great both from an OEM perspective, but also if we decided to use it for community information of some sort.
Sure.
Is that how it's envisioned right now, that during an event we would use it to relay emergency information, but otherwise, if there's community events?
Yeah, the way we envision it is it would basically be a community bulletin board, under normal, conditions, controlled maybe, by the clerk's office. So whatever events, you want to, we can talk about who is responsible for putting up the messages during normal hours, but whatever community events you want to put up there and whatever protocols you set up for that kind of information, library hours, whatever it may be, and then if there's emergency information, it will override it and we'll put up the emergency messaging.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's overdue. The only thing I question, but I leave it in your good hands and your expertise, is having it on the train trestle. And my thinking is it is a distraction, but as opposed to having it, like as you said, by grading, and then maybe I think at one point we had talked about on the west side of the train station, sort of on the ground level.
Yeah, so we looked at that, and I think the problem with that was the way we'd have to situate the sign. It would be facing east. So really the only vehicles that would see it would be the ones stopped at the light on coming east on West Ridgewood. I think, wasn't it the problem with it, Brian? It wasn't an ideal location?
We also looked at putting the corner of Wilsey and West Ridgewood and Garber, that intersection there. But there was some challenges there with getting power and the guys and whatsoever, and figuring out where to put it in relation to the flagpoles. It wasn't an easy install there.
Okay. Well, we can talk about
we can play with the
details
location
later. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment. We had a meeting. I had a meeting with the village manager and engineering this morning regarding some granting opportunities and some capital improvements that are going to be done around there. So I think that it cued into both of us when you said that. So I think the village manager is going to talk to you about that aspect of the grant, that we could maybe roll that into
we might
it.
be able to roll it into,
Yeah.
I was thinking the
Is this
tap,
safe
the
route
tap
to
one.
school?
What?
Yeah.
And tap,
And TAP.
which is another
And the
another
transit,
grant.
there were 3 different grants we were working on that we might be able to,
We
there's
might-
a couple of extra
grants.
pieces that we could roll it into it.
Yeah.
It's exactly
That's
what
why we're
was-
smiling at each other, because it looks like it
So,
could fit.
yeah.
Good. Okay, the next item is a traffic light transfer switch equipment. So there are 7 controlled intersections in the village that are county-owned, and we have an ongoing problem when there's a power outage and the traffic lights are out. If it's the county's box, we can't get into it. We can't. Our generators don't. We've talked about this in the past. Our generators are not compatible and so forth. So these transfer switches, the county will allow us to install them on those boxes, and it'll just be plug and play with our existing generators. So initial request was to cover the 7 intersections, and that was cut down to $10,500, which should cover 3, and then next year we'll have a request for the balance.
I'm sorry, could we ask you to see, I think Ilvan is in the process of putting together 4 separate proposals for grants, and we think some of this fits under some of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you could sit down with him, I'd be happy to attend if I can, but if you could sit down with him and start that discussion, and then maybe a couple of us could meet up and see if it works.
I think engineering already had this line item as an aspect in the.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Jeremy, if we could just jump in on this for maybe a question. I understand that emergency services facilitates the generators to the traffic signal boxes in an emergency, but why wouldn't this be a capital expense for traffic and signal, not emergency management? Doesn't seem to make sense to have it in there. I mean, it's a traffic and signal device. It shouldn't be under his budget. I don't think. They're just facilitating putting them in when they just hooked them up in an emergency. They take the generator out to the box, and the switches allow us to put generators there. So why would it be under his operating?
Basically, when the department head makes the request for particular items, I go by what the department head's telling me to say this is their equipment that they use during an emergency, and traffic and signal has their own. I know they bring generators to Village Hall, and we didn't have electric and so on and so forth.
Yeah, traffic and signal probably wouldn't think to ask for this.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, I kind of took a holistic approach, and when we get to the next item, you'll see these are not the emergency traffic control equipment, the 14.2. What I did was I asked, the other department heads, signal, streets, fire, police, emergency services, what do you need in an emergency that really would fall under the rubric of emergency management, and we crammed it in here. So, I mean, it's not proprietary. I'm not, from my perspective, it doesn't matter whose budget it's in. Yeah. It all kind of interrelates, which is we have a power outage.
I understand that, but you're looking for a larger number, and this, I'm not sure it's in the appropriate place. That's all.
Okay. 6 is the emergency traffic control equipment. So that's just what I was talking about. So that's additional barricades, cones, police tape, and flares for when we have to close roads due to flooding, power outage, so forth. Okay. Next is shelter equipment. This $15,000 covers about 50 cots and 50 blankets. So the idea is to start to. I'm sorry.
Is it 8,000? I'm looking at 8,000.
Oh, okay, it's 8.
Okay.
The 15 would have covered 100. Okay. That was cut. Okay, so we've talked for a while about sheltering and the village's responsibility to stand up a shelter, but we just don't have any equipment. And in the past, we've borrowed cots from the Red Cross. It's catch as catch can, and the thought was to start building slowly our own stockpile of equipment if we need to open a shelter in one of the schools or the churches and so forth. Okay. Lightning detection equipment replacement. So last year's budget, you'll recall that the existing or the original vendor that installed the equipment at the first 6 or so locations is out of business. Through the county's co-op, there's another vendor available, and the council approved some monies at the end of last year to start installing the new equipment at additional fields and locations that don't have the lightning detection. That was cut, and thankfully the Board of Ed, I believe, has agreed to pick up the differential. So hopefully soon all of the fields and schools in the village will have the equipment installed. The idea here is to go back, and it runs on a different system than the existing system. So I won't bore you with the details because I don't know all of them. Brian's a technical expert on this. But the idea is to then go back and replace the equipment and the systems that are in place at the original 6 locations to make them compatible with the new ones that are coming online. Okay.
So what is the risk if they're not compatible? I mean, what risk are we addressing if they're not compatible?
Well, one is we'll have double the monthly cost for a subscription fee. So that'll, it runs on two different systems, so it'll go from, $350 a month to, double that, $700 a month. So that's one issue. Brian, are there any other aspects that I'm missing?
You need a lot of 700s to make up 42,000.
The only other issue is the current system, if, for example, one on Vets Field, if it were to break right now, we have no way to replace it or repair it. So the system would go out and this field would be without protection. The new system is, of course, under warranty, and we expect this company to not go out of business in a few years. So we'd be able to maintain the system and keep it running at all times, or with a very minimal downtime.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from Jeremy? Thanks. Thanks, Jeremy. And now we have the library?
You want to take a break?
Nah.
No.
We have to get to the Board of Ed later.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. I don't know if you need more chairs or...
Well, I'm Nancy. Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Green, and representing the library tonight, we have Gail Campbell, who's the library board treasurer. We have Christine Driscoll here, who's a new trustee, and our assistant director, Chris Yergalonis, and our business manager, Tony Mathis. So between us, we should be able to answer any questions.
Good. Welcome, everybody.
Oh. Well, I can use this, whatever you prefer. I would just, before we get into the numbers, I would just like to draw your attention to these blue packets that we gave you. And I hope you noticed that we gave everybody on the council a new library card. Because, for one thing, it's got the key ring thing, but we want to make sure that you take advantage of our newest service, which is called Zinio. And you can go online for free at our website, and your new cards are all registered and set, and your PIN number is the last 4 digits of your library card number. You can go through our website to something called Zinio, and you have free, unlimited downloads of 100 periodical titles.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not talking about, the stuff that nobody wants to read. This is good stuff. There's Better Homes and Gardens and Us Weekly and popular photography. Right. This is the finer things in life. Roberta, I think we gave you...
you could have said, foreign affairs, the economy.
Well, we've got that, of course. Mother Jones, you know her.
Mother Jones.
But anyway, Oprah, all right. But I digress. So anyway, that's the latest in our downloadable services. And I wanted to take a minute to say that I guess what we're trying to work on all the time is how can the library best enrich the lives of the community in the areas of culture and education. And what we're finding is that one of our great resources in education and culture is the community itself. We have so many people coming to our programs. Our program attendance is up about 10%. And you can't get in the room where we have our foreign affairs discussion group every month. We have about 60 people coming. Now we have to move to a bigger room. We've got 12 adult book discussion groups, I don't know how many children's groups, but people love
to frame it that way.
Yeah, but people like to come and discuss and have intellectual stimulation. It's so much more than just borrowing books now. And I remember thinking a long time ago, we've got to make sure that we're doing things beyond what the public can get at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And there you've got the English as a Second Language programs, the special needs programs, the careers programs, homework help, the technology training programs. And, you've got a little description of all those in there. But I just wanted to point out that one of the things that we do community scans all the time to make sure that what we're doing at the library is reflective of the needs of the community. And we updated our numbers. We still see that 35% of Ridgewood has an income level of $200,000 or more. Look at household income. This is not individual. This is household income. That's the majority of the community out of these different segments. Out of 8,200 homes, about 3,000 have household income of $200,000 and more. But what very few people realize is that 12% of the households have household income of under $35,000. And to me, that's one of the, and then there's another, altogether 17% of the people in homes in Ridgewood, their household income is under $50,000. People, you don't realize that there's this whole element of the community. Everyone has this image of Ridgewood, everybody can afford everything, and it's really not true. One of the things that we started a couple of years ago that we're still very committed to is our Homework Help Center, because we're aware of all these kids that can afford private tutors and pay $80 an hour, and we really want to make sure that we're offering something for the kids that can't afford that. So we've got these terrific National Honor Society kids that we've trained as after-school coaches, and Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 5:30, in our tech training center with the Big Macs. It's kind of fun. You can see kids come in and get help with their homework for free. So that's the kind of thing that we're really trying to do more of. We're finding greater use of the services that are produced by the staff. We're seeing, as you kind of would expect, there's a slight diminishment of our book circulation and a faster diminishment of our media circulation, because people are starting to stream more, and we're kind of expecting that. And unfortunately, that's our cash cow, the movie rentals. So we're, of course, it's wonderful, all these new advances, but that is kind of a loss to us. But what we're seeing increase is the use of staff services. Reference questions. Would you dream in this day of the internet? People said the internet's going to kill libraries. We have about a 10% increase in reference questions where people are coming in, to get information. So we're serving a very diverse group of people. We're still having, on one of my sheets in here, let's see. Well, I'll come upon it later. But, I think our foot traffic is over 4,000 visitors a month that come into the library. Yeah. So I'm going to wind that up. I'm going to let Gail talk to you for a minute about the budget, and then we're going to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you.
I wanted to thank the council for this opportunity to present our budget. Our proposal for the 2014 year is $2,320,423, which is a 1.9% increase over last year's budget. It's about $42,273 over the last year's budget, and it's also basically the same number over 2009's budget, which means that our between 2009 and the present time, our budget has gone down, and then it's gradually come back up again. As Nancy was saying, the library is a focal point of the village, and we believe it deserves the village's support. So if you look at the operating retrospective from 2009 to 2014, and you look at the budget-to-budget numbers, I guess I'll be discussing those a little bit. So some of the reasons that we need the increase is because some of our patron service fees have been declining. We're seeing a substantial decline in non-resident memberships. We're thinking there are going to be about 7,000 less than last year because of a change in Woodcliff Lakes policies. We have a decline in DVD rental income of about 4,000 due to technology, Netflix, and things like that. Our room rental income, we are expecting that to decrease by about $3,000. We're using the auditorium more for library programs, so we have less opportunities to rent it. And then we had some additional changes that aren't really reflected in the budget, but our cafe has been closed, and we anticipate it's going to be closed until June. So that's about $2,500 less in income. And also, because of a change in Buckle's interpretation of their rules, we have to stop charging certain fees that we've been charging, and we're expecting to lose another $8,000 of revenue. So on the revenue side, we're expecting somewhat of a decrease in patron fees of about $17,000. Now, on the expenditure side, we feel that we've been very fiscally responsible. We do have a new union contract with our employees that calls for a 2% increase. However, we are trying to cut our costs by in the area of health benefits. We've eliminated surviving spouse lifetime health benefits for all existing and new employees. Under the contract, we've eliminated lifetime health benefits for all employees hired or newly eligible after January 1st, 2014. And since 2004, we have no terminal leave for unused sick time, and our employees have been contributing to their health care since 2004. So we feel like we're trying to save costs there. We've also changed utility providers, and that we should be able to realize some savings with that also. Two other things that I note about our library salaries is our employees do not have automatic steps, and we don't have any increases for longevity built into the contract. So, there's one other thing Nancy pointed out to me today, that so we had some bad news. We have an oil tank that needs remediation, and I guess some of the paperwork was lost by the village, and we know that's going to cost us at least $10,000. But on the good news side, we have a lower pension bill. Our bill is going to be out $16,000 less than last year. So those are not things that were factored in when we wrote this budget out. They're things that just actually happened, I guess, this week. Nancy's going to discuss the capital budget in a minute, but if you have any questions, we'd be happy to try and answer them.
Sure. Well, let me just say, first of all, thank you, not just for this presentation, but you guys run a great library. As you know, I'm a big fan. And I agree with you. The library is a community space unlike anything else in Ridgewood. And to your point about, there are folks with lower incomes that we don't recognize all the time. The library can serve as a great equalizer in many respects. And your numbers are really compelling. 333,500 customers last year, 474,000 books and media items, 65,000 reference questions, 34,000 guests at cultural programs. That's amazing. That's compelling. And it shows what an important place the library is in the village, and the important role that it plays. I have one general question, then I'll open it up for these guys. You talk about the declining revenues, and I'm one of those people that doesn't get my DVDs there anymore. And that means not only do you not get those fees, but you don't get my late fees too. But there are a lot of reasons, and they make sense. What are you guys thinking going forward in terms of generating new revenues? You said room rentals are down, but because you're using the space for good purposes. So have you guys thought about sort of next year what you're going to do to drive new revenues?
Well, one thing is we're somewhat confined by Buckle's rules about raising fees. We found out we can only charge fines, not fees, just because, as you know, the library is supposed to be free, and Buckle's is very, very concerned with the library not being free. So we are trying to do new things, but maybe I'll leave that to Nancy to.
Yeah, there isn't too much, as Gail said, really, that we can do. We've been very aggressive in our fee structure. When we started having the budget cuts about 5 years ago, we started trying to generate fees so that we didn't have to furlough the staff as much and close as many Sundays. We've added programs that non-residents can now join, and we thought that one thing we could do with the non-resident things is we could court Saddle River. They don't have a library, and most of their residents go to Upper Saddle River, which also sells library cards. But we're pretty close for a lot of Saddle River, so we thought that we could court them. I don't really know what else we can do in terms of fee-based programs that are going to bring in more income.
Right.
Unless, I don't know, parking meters.
Please don't say parking meters.
Sure, yeah, I get it, yeah.
$1 or $2 for a program,
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Questions, comments? Maybe we'll start with Gwen, because Gwen, you are the liaison to the library.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, everyone knows that it's been my heart and soul, and everything that I would do, anything I can do to support the library, I would always do, because it is a symbol of who we are in Ridgewood. We are about people. We're about children and families and supporting those who, as Paul said, it's the greatest equalizer. I was there a month ago reading to a dog with the children, and it just made me feel good about being with young kids again, because I don't have them around anymore. It's just a fabulous place. It's a great symbol of everything that we like to hold dear in this village. And as far as departments go, it is an expensive department, but it's not anywhere near as expensive as the police department, the fire department. And I would like to have it be up there in that same echelon with Parks and Rec and the library, everything that's human in this village and everything that's important. I also want to point out that the library is sustained through private funding as well. And, we can't just keep shunting all the support of the library off to the private sector. It's up to the village to do its part in maintaining the library and not expecting events and private organizations to fund the library. This is really our responsibility to fund the library. And since when did they start cutting the library? 2009? Really, our support has gone backwards.
2010 was the first.
The village did not do much to support the library, and finally last year we started to augment its budget, and this year I think we should augment it again, and continue to be proud of the library as one of the assets that people move here for this library. Thank you for everything. Oh, also it's so important to see the two great things that they have, and while they can't increase revenue, they have set great standards for Ridgewood. They're a role model for Ridgewood, really, in what they've done with outsourcing their custodial service and saving a lot of money that way, and renegotiating their union contracts. They have really raised the bar in terms of what their expectations are for their employees, and I think they'll be helping us when it comes time to renegotiate some more contracts.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gwen.
Thank you, Lady. I just have a question for Steve. Steve, what is the 2014 statutorily required number?
That's the legal minimum.
Yes, right.
For this year, it's $2,296,000.
Use the microphone.
Steve can't hear you.
It's $2,296,000 even.
2296.
2296.
So this is for, so it's about 44,000, approximately.
42,000, I think it comes to.
Yeah, well,
44?
it's close enough, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2296 versus 2320 is the request. So it's for 24,000.
Councilman, the levy, it's $2 million even, $296. That's the tax.
2 million.
Last year was $2,064,860.
Oh, it's 2,096,000.
Right.
2,209,600,000?
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
I heard it the other way, too.
Wait, say that again.
2,096,000? Is that correct? Okay.
2096, right?
I had 2296 when you said it the first time. Okay.
So the request is for $224,000 over and above what the statutory requirement is.
And That's
correct?
yes, but if you look at last year's sheets here, it's only a $42,000.
No, I understand that. Yeah, and I know we've gone beyond the statutory requirements for the last several years.
Yes.
I'm just trying to put it in perspective, because that number has kind of diminished over the years.
Yes, because of assessed values.
Because of
That's
assessed
correct.
values, right, it's based on assessed values, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's 200, it's about 224,000 over and above the assessed value number that they come up with. Okay, that's all I have for now, thanks.
I just want to comment that the library really is not a book depository and lender, but a cultural center, a civic center. One night, our council meeting mercifully ended very early, and I went over and I saw a documentary on the Central Park 5, and not only was the movie shown, but the creator of the documentary, Sarah Burns, the daughter of Rick Burns, the documentary filmmaker, was there, mingling among us, and we had a chance to ask her about how she made the movie and so. I mean, this is the kind of cultural event that is rare in the suburban environment, and I was really impressed with it. And I just wish I could be there, more evenings than I am. I think the library is really where more citizens meet our government than anywhere in this community. And we really do present ourselves in a very positive way over there. I just have one question on the budget, and that is the 23, half of your increase from last year's 23,000, 24,000 for buildings and grounds. And Gail, you may have explained it, and I didn't hear it. Why is there such an increase in buildings and grounds?
Basically because the building is aging.
I can't hear you.
The building is aging. For instance, last year we spent $12,000 repairing the roof. There's just been a continued need for repairs. The air conditioning system, the heating system, the roof keeps leaking. So as the building ages, that number keeps going up. So that's anticipating additional repairs of the building.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. There was talk of putting in a monitoring system or a camera system, sort of a security system. Is that part of the expenditure anticipated for next year?
No, that's not in there, Al. That was something that the council did approve for last year, and we thought that we were going to be buying the cameras with the Village of Ridgewood, but as it turns out, we're going to be doing that on our own, but we got sidetracked with the oil tank remediation. Mm-hmm. So we'll be moving on to the cameras very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the only question I have, and it kind of goes to what Councilwoman Houck was talking about, I feel like when your kids are little, you're in the library all the time, and then middle school, there's the lull, and then high school, it's back again. So is there anything that you're thinking of doing to capture those middle schoolers? Because I'm just thinking of kids in the neighborhood and who you see and when you see them, but that middle school age is where I feel like I don't want to say you're losing them because they come back in the high school, but how can you keep the consistency for the middle schoolers?
Well, I didn't pay her to ask this question, I promise. What we find with grades 6 to 12 is they don't want us to do programs for them. They want to do programs. And so we have a volunteer program for them. Last year, we were able to welcome 243 middle school and high school volunteers that put in more than 3,000 hours. And you can imagine, as much as we appreciate their work, the staff time that it takes to find worthwhile things that they can do. And they do things like they do reading pals, where they read to little kids while their parents are in the library. They do a lot of work in our tech lab, helping people understand how to use their new devices, things like that. They put books in order. They did ESL tutoring last summer for their peers, because the schools don't have a summer ESL program, and the kids, the students wanted to keep going with that. So what we find is that they're not really looking for us to entertain them. They're looking for ways that they can be useful. So we work with them, in that way, and we're hoping to, continue to do more.
Yeah, because I know that, at least for my teens, the literature that comes from here, they don't necessarily read. So and even the e-news comes to the parents. So is there any type of information that you can get to them I don't want to say to bypass the parents, but
Yeah.
so that the interest goes straight to them and
Well, I know Gina, you must know Gina Micking, our young adult librarian. She goes to the high school every year during freshman, whatever it is, when they do the orientation with Charles Gallo, who's our hip young tech guy, and they just bring a table and they have some way to give kids library cards on the spot. And they address all of the students at the freshman orientation programs. They go to every single freshman orientation program and address the students, and make sure that they all have library cards, invite them all to the library. And we have actually a lot of young adults in the library. We have the small young adult room, and it's always full, and the whole library is full of kids, after school, actually. Thank you.
okay, thanks.
Great. Any other questions, comments?
Oh, can I just clarify one thing for anybody that might not remember it? That with the state law, they establish a legal minimum, which Tom pointed out, which is based on the assessed value of real estate properties. And they also establish an annual legal maximum, which is a 15% increase above the previous year's budget. So we're in the middle there.
Somewhere between. Okay, do you want to go over the capital budget?
Well, I could.
Quickly. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Look at the capital budget in your handout. Did you bring the microphone?
The first thing on our list is for the oil tank, the remediation, in case we're pretty certain that we have to pay at least $10,650 for that. The second thing is a security access control system, which would allow our employees to go in and out of the building with like an ID card that you would just swipe against like you do in a lot of office buildings now. That's for security. We also want to limit access to some of the internal rooms using those security cards. So that would be about $15,200. The third thing are automatic sliding doors with a heat curtain. Our doors now let a lot of cold air when they open and close automatically into the lobby, and we use our lobby for the cafe, and it also affects the auditorium. So that would control the heat a little bit and make it more comfortable. That item is $26,000. We also, the fourth item is to replace some of our aging computers, which is at $7,700. And again, printers, $5,800 would help us replace some of our older equipment and add some equipment. The sixth item is a new AV media system for the auditorium, which would cost about $24,500. As we're using our auditorium more, obviously that's something we would really like to enhance, the theater experience, and we have many programs that would be very helpful. The seventh thing is a checkout kiosk. We'd actually like two of them eventually, but we're asking for one in 2014, and that's about $18,465. That would allow people to check in their books automatically. We cut down on staff time. And the last thing is a generator. That's $125,000. That would allow the... Over 2 years, and I'm sorry, $250,000. You're right. I'm looking at the wrong number. That would obviously allow the town to have a place to go if there's a power outage. That's sort of a decision the village would have to make, where they want to have a generator or what building they'd like to have power at it when there is an emergency. So that's our basic budget. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. Thanks for that. Just starting with the generator. I think that's a great idea. We've had conversations with Jeremy and others in the past about what makes the most sense, and we don't need to have a conversation here, but it's one we probably should have at some point soon. In terms of, where was it? Oh yeah, more generally, I was just wondering, the foundation, what did they pay for, and Friends? Where does that money go? I know Gwen referred to it, but it'd be useful for us to have an understanding of what that money's used for.
Well, the Friends contribute, most of their money goes to buying books and providing programs for the library. They don't buy capital equipment or pay for anything like that. The foundation has an endowment. They're building an endowment, and they do fund larger projects. They don't really necessarily give us any annual support for things like this. Working on some plans. Go ahead, I'll let Nancy. Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, I was just going to say, the Friends also pay for a townwide newsletter. This goes to every home, and this is part of our effort in outreach to make sure that everybody in town knows what we're doing. They don't have to necessarily go online to find out. They can, this is our invitation to everyone in town.
But in terms of the foundation, and I think it's great, I mean, we've got so many folks in this community who step forward and give their time and their money to the foundation, which is great. Do they look at something like this, potentially like pick like one of these items and say, okay, we're going to sort of raise the money for this? Is that how that sometimes works?
Well, the foundation has been focused on creating an endowment. Their initial goal was a $1 million endowment, which they just hit in the last year. And what they're trying to do is have that endowment in place so that will throw off income that the library would be able to use. So they're trying to get the endowment to now I think they're trying to get it to 1.5 million before they start to take money out of it to give to the library. But in the meantime, they have done library improvements just last year. They painted the entire children's room. It's beautiful. And the children's room had gotten very beat up since we opened in 2008. They put beadboard molding up halfway all through the children's room where strollers had jammed up and book carts and everything, where the walls were kind of all chipped off, so that looks really nice. They painted murals outside the children's room that's very inviting to come in. They found Ridgewood artists to come in, and so they paid for all of that last year. But pretty much they support technology and they support major improvements, and we are hoping in a couple of years to really renovate the interior of the library and realign how we are using the existing space, and we'll be calling on the foundation at that time.
My last question is, are you guys going to get new Read posters up in the...
Yes,
I'm just joking.
We certainly are. Yes, we are.
Joking.
No, it's a very good question, and I'm embarrassed that you had to ask it. Of course
any questions, comments?
I just want to comment on the foundation, having had the privilege of being on their board for 7 or 8 years. I think that one of the joys of giving to the foundation is that the foundation has the luxury of finding projects that will make the library extraordinary. And I don't think we should think of the foundation as sort of a gap filler for our capital needs. We as a village have to support the library, keep the roof maintained, and that's not something you attract donors to a foundation to do. We're going to replace the roof. The foundation can take this library another step forward into making it, truly special when they have the kind of endowment that they're looking for, and we can count on the foundation not to hoard but to spend the money in creative ways. So I don't want to see us think of the foundation as sort of a gap filler for the government requirement to fund the library.
And can I just add one thing? All of our outside performers, every single outside performer program that we offer a year is funded by the Friends of the Library, all of it. So everything that you see in here, all these programs and all these events, it's all funded by the Friends of the Library. So, so they're very, we have 4 outstanding volunteer groups that support the library. It's the council, the library board, the foundation board, and the Friends board. And we're very fortunate to have all of you.
Question on the generator.
Yes, sir.
Has anybody investigated the possibility of tying the library into the existing generator at the Village Hall?
Yes, yes. Well, Chris Ruddishauser and the engineering department can explain this better. They said that generator is barely adequate to run the police station right now, and that they're hoping to have a better generator installed that will power all of Village Hall. And, we did ask, could we at least go in just enough to leach enough energy to keep our alarm panel going, but they said it's just not possible with their existing equipment. But the engineering department has written a grant for generators that would power both middle schools, I believe, as well as the library, and they gave library medium priority there. So, hope, maybe...
Possibilities then. Okay, great.
We'll see.
Yeah, good, thanks, Nancy.
Okay. Anything?
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks. And last but not least. Village manager.
Village
You want
manager.
to sit over there?
What?
You want to sit over there?
No. I prefer sitting here. So there's a general theme in the village manager budget, which is the village manager and her staff don't get paid quite enough. That was a joke, guys. No, but seriously, on the overall numbers, we're down, I guess, about 15% overall. A lot of it has to do with salaries and differentials in salaries between last year and this year. We are up, I just want to say before we point it out, because, I've been pointing out to a lot of the directs that we should be coming in at 2013 actual levels. We are up from 2013 actual, although the overall number is down. And my intent there is to use the excess. We might switch some line items around to help fund the audit that we want to do across the place on cash. I mean, it'll pay for at least some of it. The biggest increase, I think, is in employee relations, and this is the mayor's wellness program, this is the holiday party, this is the picnic, and we think that we can cut back on those and then help to start funding the audit that we'd like to do. So I would suggest that we keep this, it's still down 15%, we're from 328 down to 270 year over year.
Great.
And that's
Any
kind of
questions, comments? One question, that actually it's not for the village manager's office, but when the library was talking, this idea of a heat curtain, I know we've talked about in the lobby that we had this problem about it getting so cold in the winter.
That's true in our lobby, too.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's true in our lobby.
Have we explored it for this building also, or is...
We have spoken about it.
Yeah, it has been spoken about, actually, with the engineering department, so I don't know where that's funded, but I do have to double-check with Chris, because I know your one was looking into that.
Yeah, it's not in the current
see.
capital request, though, because we're trying to keep that capital request down, and it's
It
still...
just reminded me when they were
I just want to say
talking.
the capital request is still over what you folks are calling for in the capital request on our side, right? So we have to go back and hone a bit.
Heat rises.
I was just going to say, we have a
40
four-story,
foot ceiling.
cathedral,
Yeah, it
so
wasn't
that's
designed well.
conundrum.
No. Okay, I just wanted to throw that.
Yeah.
Great.
No, we're good.
I'm aware of the issue, yeah.
All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
The ayes have it.
All right, good night, everybody.
I think we're going to...
I seconded.
We have the Board of Ed now, right?
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I got to run to the grocery store.
Jeremy, you need a ride home?